Com 240, narrating Chapter 9 of Interpersonal Relationships. We are getting ready to come towards the end of the material for the course, and so it is my hope that you find the vast majority of this information to be very applicable for your everyday life. We are on page 195 of the DeVito text, and if you can follow along with me, in this chapter, we will describe the advantages and disadvantages to interpersonal relationships. So, more specifically, why do we have them and how and why they can be beneficial. The second part will look at the stages of interpersonal relationships and give some examples of those types. And then, lastly, we'll conclude with talking about different types of jealousy, bullying, relational violence, and identify some strategies to manage the dark side of communication. So when we ask ourselves and look at relationships, we always want to figure out what are the advantages and what are some of the disadvantages to forming interpersonal relationships. Remember, early on in the semester, I discussed how interpersonal relationships are communication with two or more people. An intrapersonal relationship is communication with oneself, okay? So all relationships have advantages and disadvantages. So think about your marriage, your boyfriend or girlfriend, think about your employer-employee relationship. Think about a best friend or a semi-good friend, as well as your Facebook friends or Instagram, Snapchat, etc. So here are some advantages of why human beings should be in relationships. First, it helps lessen the loneliness. A lot of people right now with the COVID going on, people are nervous out there and they're lonely because they can't see their significant others. Number two, it can aid in helping you learn a lot about yourself. Oftentimes, our friends tell us a lot about us as well as our family members. The third aspect is it can contribute to the physical and emotional health. It can help maximize pleasure and minimize pain, and it can provide a source for stimulation, intellectual, physical, and emotional. So among the advantages of online relationships is that they reduce the importance of physical characteristics and instead emphasize such factors as rapport, similarity, and self-disclosure, and in the process promote relationships that are based on emotion rather than intimacy. So, 15 or 20 years ago, there was this stigma in terms of, you met her online or him online or whoever, right? And so those things have rapidly been changing. So what do you see as the main advantages of online relationships? There are some disadvantages. All relationships do have some disadvantages as well. Number one, there sometimes is a pressure to reveal yourself and expose your vulnerabilities, and who really wants to do that? Number two, it can increase your obligations to the other people. So sometimes if you want to just do you, you have to rope other people in. It can lead to abandonment of other relationships, can be emotionally difficult, and have the potential to cause great hurt. So more specifically, raise your hand or just, rhetorically, how many of us could go out and sit at a restaurant all by ourselves? I know I can, but some of us can't. How about can you go see a movie by yourself or go to a ball game? Some of us are so reliant on other individuals where we can't even fathom the very idea that we would do that without someone. So think about, can you sit at a restaurant by yourself, go to a movie, etc. So we're not going to focus on the six-stage model of relationships. This won't be applicable, so I'm going to move through this for us, okay? You do need to know about social penetration theory, and this is where we talk about intimacy. Social penetration theory is kind of like this onion. I want you to think of an onion, and when we look at an onion on the outer shell, and I know not all of us are fans of onions, when you peel away the flakiness or the outside, you get deeper and deeper, and that onion becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Think of that where the deeper you go in terms of knowing someone's deepest and darkest secret, there's something called the breadth and the depth. So the breadth is how many things you tell someone something about you. So you may tell someone your political affiliation, your religious conviction, your sexuality, your likes, your dislikes, what kind of music, etc. All of those things typically are at some point of the onion. So what is deep for one person may not be deep for someone else, and that's where you get the depth, where how deep do you go? So telling someone your favorite food, do you think that would be something that's in an inner onion or on the outer shell? You guessed it, probably on the depending on how you look at it, in terms of your favorite food, that would be on the outer shell. But a deepest and darkest secret, like when we talked about Johari window, that's going to be penetrated, and that's going to be very sacred to us and be deep down. So, negative turning points are often positive, as the examples in the text indicate, but they can also be negative. For example, the first realization that a partner has been unfaithful, that can just crush anyone out there, or lied about past history, or revealing a debilitating condition, which likely can lead to a significant turning point. So, all relationships have a turning point. Think about your place of employment. Did you continue on with that job? Did you end up wanting to quit it? And if so, why? There was a turning point. Something happened. Was it a crappy boss? Did you move away out of state because your friends all left? All relationships have some extent of a turning point. So let's talk about the three types of jealousy, okay? And when we look at the three types of jealousy, I am on page, let me get that, because that's a vital one. We're on 209. These are what we call the three types of jealousy: cognitive, emotional, behavioral. Okay? Cognitive jealousy would involve your suspicious thinking or worrying or imagining different scenarios where your partner is romantically with someone else. Emotional jealousy involves feelings when you see your partner laughing or kissing or hugging a rival. So let's say, for example, you go to pick up, your girlfriend from work. You surprise her and you see her talking to someone of the opposite sex or someone who you deem as a threat. That could be emotional jealousy. And lastly, behavioral jealousy is where you start doing suspicious going through purses and wallets and emails, Instagram, Facebook. You start going through someone's phone. That is an example of behavioral jealousy. So here's some ways to deal with jealousy. Number one, there's negative responses, and you want to integrative communication, which means using positive responses. Much research, though, here's a very good factoid, though. Much research has reported that men and women experience jealousy for very different reasons, and this is according to Buller and Buss. Basically, the research finds that men experience jealousy for their partner being physical. So, physically, it could be hug in their proximity. We talked about space a couple weeks ago. However, women experience jealousy when it's on the emotional level, with intimate. So let me give you two specific examples. Here you go. So let's say, for example, so studies would tell us that men would be more upset, and you can kind of look at this in regular life. Men would be more upset with another rival or man being romantically intimate with their partner, opposed to another man or a rival writing them a letter, right? That really won't faze a guy. It's the, oh, you're holding hands with my girlfriend, or she's in your car. Those things will upset a man. On the other end, what will upset a woman typically, okay, they can give men a pass a little bit. They can give us a pass a little bit on the physical sense, okay? They give us a pass on that. However, if you like another woman's picture if she's on a beach, if you call another woman baby or baby, oh, it's over. It's the emotional sense. So that doesn't mean that it can be flipped, some women more masculine and vice versa. But what we see is men get upset typically, most men, not all, over the physical sense, women over the emotional. So very good. Hopefully you can connect that to your life. So when we look at bullying, you have gossiping, which is treating others as inferior, and you have cyberbullying, which is emerging now, which is online, and I'll defer to you to dig deep into the text for this aspect of it. Sometimes, though, bullying is just part of an organization's culture where, for example, newcomers are treated unfairly. I remember when I took my first teaching job, I had a middle office with no windows, right? And they jokingly told me, "Oh, Cub, you're gonna, it's gonna take you 20 years to get a window, right, or in a corner." So, you don't run an HR, and I'm gonna tell this is unfair. It's sometimes part of the culture. Sometimes it's perpetrated by a group. So think about if you played on a football or basketball athletic team. Think about we do this in families too as well. So when we look at relationship violence on a serious note, you have three types of relational violence, and they're pretty self-explanatory based off of their word. You have verbal or emotional violence, where these are things that you say or you become emotional. The second one is physical violence, where you actually hit someone, unfortunately. And lastly, is sexual violence, is where you force an individual forces themselves on a person where it's unwanted. So when you're dealing with relationship violence, you need to know this. Number one, you are not alone, and It's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Number two, always have a plan for safety. Number three, know your resources, the resources that are out there for assistance. Know that you personally can change and take responsibility. Those are ways to deal with relationship violence. So, a friend of mine, she's in a crummy relationship. Her baby dad is, she just can't shake them. They've been together since high school, right? And so there's something that won't allow her to leave that relationship. And so you have to be mindful of those things. That concludes chapter 9. Quick chapter there. We will have 2 more chapters to go. Hopefully you found this information to be beneficial and worthy of self-improvement. Take care.